Hello friends, in this video tutorial, let us understand the concepts of SSAS cube aggregations and the storage settings related to the storage of partitions. Okay, so now for this purpose, let us go to the SSDT. Now we will use the cube that we have developed in our earlier video tutorial. In this cube, if you go to partitions tab, then we had created 5 partitions. 2 partitions were created for internet sales and 3 partitions were created for reseller sales. Now, till now we have not created the aggregations. Okay, so if you go over here, we can see that there are no aggregations created. Okay, unassigned aggregation design, unassigned aggregation design is written, which means right now we have not created aggregations. Okay. So now in order to create aggregations for these partitions, right? So what we can do is we can right click over here and say design aggregations. Now at the time of creation of these partitions also we had an option of designing the aggregations along with the creation of partitions or designing the aggregations later on, and we had selected the option of creating the aggregations later on, and hence right now after creating the partitions we are now creating the aggregations for those partitions. So we can right click and we can say design aggregations. Okay, so it will start the design aggregations wizard. Click next. Now we have clicked on the first one, internet sales. Okay, the first and the second one was for retailer sales. So now as we have clicked over here for the internet sales, it is showing 2 partitions. So for which partition do we want to create the aggregations? So let us select the first one. Okay, next. Now let us maximize the screen. We can see over here multiple type of aggregations, right? So these are the cube dimensions. Okay, and these are the attributes within the cube dimensions. So we know that aggregations are created based on the attributes of the cube dimensions. Okay, so hence it is showing us on the left hand side, it is showing us the cube dimensions, and inside it is showing us the attributes of the cube dimensions. Now on the right hand side, if we see, then we have got 4 options: default, full, none and unrestricted. Aggregations are pre-calculated stored values inside our cubes. Okay, default. Now to understand this default and full, let us go back to our let's say we go to this one, right? Cube structure. Okay, so now if you come to cube structure, then we can see that there are these 4 measures, right? Now if you go to sales amount and go to its properties, then we can see that the aggregate function to be used over here is sum. So sum is the default aggregation, okay, for this particular measure, and this particular sum will be calculated against every attribute of this particular cube dimensions. Okay, so and what are the other, this is the meaning of default, that is if we select sum, if you have selected sum, then sum is the default, and full means all these aggregations. Okay, now right now for the sales amount, sum is selected, right? So let us go back to our aggregation design wizard, right? So let us again restart it. Let us select the first one. Let us go back to the screen. So this means that for if we select default, then the default aggregation function that is selected for the measure, that will be used against all the attributes of cube dimensions. If fully selected, then all the possible aggregation functions that are there in SSAS will be used for all the attributes of cube dimensions. If none is selected, then no aggregates will be stored or saved in the cube for the attributes or against the attributes for each cube dimension. And unrestricted, is similar to full, but it's having some differences with respect to full, and we can understand its differences after we go to the next screens. Okay, so let us click the next. Right now just understand that full and unrestricted are similar. Okay, the differences we will observe in next one or two screens. So let's click this next button. Okay, now let us click the count. So it is saying us that for internet sales measure there are two partitions, okay, out of which the total count is 58,189, whereas in this particular partition there will be around 42,984 records. Okay, so this is just giving us the value of how many records are there out of the total records in this particular partition. Okay, so let us click next. Now this is very important screen. Now how many aggregations do you want to calculate? The more aggregates we calculate and store in the cube, the more space will be occupied. So if we increase the number of aggregates inside the cube which are pre-calculated and stored, then the size of the cube increases. Okay, whereas if you have more aggregates stored, pre-calculated and stored inside the cube, then your data retrieval becomes very fast. That particular part of data retrieval becomes very fast. So there is a trade-off. If you want faster retrieval, store more aggregates, pre-calculated aggregates inside your cube. It increases the speed, but at the same time it increases the size. So there is a cost involved. It increases the size of the cube. So there is a trade-off. So generally what we do is, typically what happens is we go with the default aggregates. Okay, so calculate the default aggregates, and when we come to this screen, what we generally do is we start with the performance gain of around 30%. Okay, so calculate the aggregates till the performance gain is around 30%. Okay, and then what we do is we go for usage based aggregates. Okay, that we'll see in one of our future video tutorials. Then we go for the strategy of going with usage based aggregate storage, right? So now for the purpose of this particular video tutorial, let us say that we start with performance gain of 30%. Okay, now let us click the start button. Okay, so which all aggregates will it calculate? It will calculate as per the alphabetical order. In the cube also, if we go to the cube dimensions, they were mentioned as per the alphabetical order. And if you open any particular cube dimension, then inside the cube dimension also the attributes are all mentioned as per the alphabetical order. Okay, so based on that it is calculating. So this means that for 30% of the aggregates, okay, it's going to, so it's going to go ahead with the 21 aggregates. It's going to calculate 21 aggregates to reach the optimization level of 30%, and 133.7 KB will be the size or the space utilized. Okay, so this is how the graph looks. Now let us click the next button and we can name it, right? We can name the aggregate design for internet sales and for partition 1. Okay, or we can say for this is the first one. Okay, now deploy and process. Now this means that the aggregate designed will be deployed to a cube, and the data for that particular calculations will be retrieved and stored inside the cube. If you go with the first option of deploy and process. Now second, save the aggregate but do not process them, means save the design of the aggregates inside the cube but do not process the data related to it. Okay, so right now we will go with the first one and say finish. Right, so now it is asking us to process. So let us say run, because it will process the full now. Good, it has proceeded, right? The processing is successful, right? So close and close, right? And deployment is successful, correct? So this means now it will start showing us the 21 aggregates which it has shown as an estimate. Now those 21 aggregates have been saved, and the estimated number of rows are this, and the partition used is internet sales. Actually the name of the partitions is for the internet sales there are two partitions. First partition is named as internet sales and the second partition is named as internet sales P1. So this partition has been used. Okay. Similarly, we can go ahead and do this calculate aggregates for the other four partitions, that is remaining one in internet sales and the three remaining in reseller sales, right? So in this video tutorial we will not be going through calculation of each of these four partitions, but now let us focus or concentrate on another aspect, right? So if we come to a partitions tab, now it will start showing us that for aggregate design, okay, it has been done, right? Aggregate design, the name of the name of the aggregate design that we had given, aggregate design underscore internet underscore sales underscore 1, right? And the number of rows also it is showing us, right? Estimated rows, right, for the first partition. So it means looking at this screen also we can understand that out of these 5 partitions, this one partition is now having aggregates designed and saved, right? So now let us understand one more important concept over here which is related to this. So now we are telling that if we have more aggregates then it will have more storage space, right? So let us go to the storage settings also to understand some more concepts related to it. So let us go to storage settings. Now which storage settings are we looking at right now? It is for internet sales is the name of the partition, is the name of the first partition. Okay. If we are in this particular row and then if we click storage settings, then it will show the storage settings for the second partition, that is internet sales P1. Okay. But right now as we are in this row and we have clicked storage settings, so it is showing us the internet sales setting, it is showing us the storage settings for the internet sales partition, which is the first partition inside internet sales. So now let us understand these storage settings. This is the default one, that is MOLAP, that is multidimensional OLAP. So what happens is the data is stored in multidimensional format. Notifications, when the data changes in the base database, right, the original OLTP or the base database, whenever it changes, there are no notifications sent to this particular SSAS cube, okay, or SSAS database, and processing must be either scheduled or may perform manually. So we can perform these particular calculations or manually, or we can schedule it. Now we will see in future video tutorials how to do it, that is how to schedule this calculation automatically or processing automatically, or how to perform it manually, right? We'll see it in future video tutorials, right? Now let us go to scheduled. So schedule is similar to MOLAP except the fact that the processing happens after every 24 hours. If you go to automatic, then the server will start listening to the notifications of data, but there is no restriction on the latency, which means when it will process is decided by the server, right? And medium latency means the duration is fixed for processing. Server will keep listening for the notifications and after every 4 hours it will process. Low latency means the server will keep listening for the notifications and it will process the data after every 30 minutes. So this is very low time period, right? 30 minutes. It's like near to real time, right? And now if you go one step further, then the database storage in SSAS is no longer MOLAP. Till now it was MOLAP, right? Multidimensional format. But if we go one step further, then it is real time HOLAP, which means the data, the measure group is the whole data is not stored in multidimensional format. It is a mix now. So let us understand how the measure group data is maintained in relational format. Okay, so whatever data is related for the measure group, the pure basic data is maintained in the relational format, whereas the aggregations are stored in the multidimensional format. There is only the aggregates that we have designed, only that portion is stored in the multidimensional format. Okay, server will keep listening for the data changes and all queries reflect the current state of the data. Very important, meaning whatever changes of the data happens, that will be reflected. Okay, so if you want this option, then your server's processing power has to be good, and secondly your network has to be good, right? And lastly, let's go for the last one, that is real time. This is ROLAP. So which means all the data in aggregates are stored in relational format. it is not stored in multidimensional format, and the server will keep listening for the data changes, and most important thing, all queries reflect the current state of data, which means it is real time OLAP. Okay, all the data changes that happen in OLTP or the base database, okay, where the transactional database, all such changes will keep on getting reflected in our OLAP. Okay, so that at the real time, right? So this is the real time OLAP, but right now let us go with the default option of MOLAP. Okay, so let us click on OK. So friends, now let us understand the concepts of full and unrestricted. So if we go for the option of full aggregates calculation, then it is actually restricted by the options that we specify in the next screens. That is, if we specify performance increase only up to 30%, then after 30% increase has been reached for the performance, then no further aggregates will be calculated and saved automatically, which means if our particular attribute of cube dimension is lying at the end, then maybe it will not be taken into consideration, right? So full aggregates will not be calculated for that particular attribute of the cube dimension. But if we had gone for unrestricted, then it means that even if our conditions of storage or limits or restrictions of storage have been reached, still in an unrestricted manner for that particular attribute of the cube dimension, all the all the aggregates will be calculated, okay, and saved, which means the restrictions of storage space and performance improvements that we specify in one of the next screens, that do not apply if we have specified the option as unrestricted instead of specifying the option as full. Okay, so I hope friends this video tutorial is useful to you. Thank you.